This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the website builder with all the tools you need to create your own site to showcase and sell artwork. Mike Mattesi, the author of the FORCE method books, wanted to check out the Proko studio recently, so I invited him over, and while he was here, I also got him to film a few demos.
Hey guys, this is Mike Mattesi. I'm the creator of the FORCE drawing series. I'm going to be covering the basics of FORCE with you over these next 3 videos. First, I'm going to share with you the types of line that I've seen in the past from students. One of the common ones is this. I call this the hairy line because it feels hairy. The second one is something that looks like this. And then the third line is this. So this artist here has lots of little thoughts, right? And typically this comes from just being scared, right? And worried and nervous about trying to be really accurate to the model. I totally get it. I've been here. Believe me, I've been through the fear of, oh, I gotta try and get this right, and this is so difficult, and I gotta see if this measurement is correct, and being really, really careful through this process. Artist B is usually the whatever artist, right? It's like, it's something like this, it's something like that. So they're just kind of scribbling around. And what I'm gonna teach you today is C. So in C, we are trying to get from here to here, or 1 to 2, all in one stroke. This mark on the piece of paper, to me, actually represents a force. Okay, so here I'll draw this really nice and big. The line itself has this coming from, this apex, or what I was calling the main event, and this going to. Force is coming from one place and we're directing it to the next. Right? So directional force isn't always the same line. Okay, it's like, it could be this, it could be this, it could be somewhere in between, where it's got some curve, but it's not super strong. What determines how straight or curved a line is with its applied force. There's a secondary force, right? And this force, we had directional here. This secondary force is this orange zone. And that's inside this line, because the line is the contour of the body. So you got to keep that in mind. As you're drawing these lines, it's the edge of the figure. Force is always inside the figure, pushing its way out. It's never the other way around. So here we are, we're pushing out, right? Here, this is applied force. And based on how much force is pushing into each one of those lines, will determine how curved it is, right? So this one on this page is definitely the winner when it comes to applied force. This curve is like really, really strong, right? Really strong, like so. Now, I almost picture it like a comet. Like here's this comet and it's like shooting its way across the paper and all this applied force is pushing its way in there, and that's why this line is so bent, right? It might have been like this, and now all this applied force is pushing into it, so it gets bent like this, like a comet, and it's getting pushed, right, from inside the body. It's about, function is balance, right? So we're trying to find balance in the figure, but that balance comes from all these forces creating these systems of rhythms that come together to create the entire figure. When I'm drawing a model, one of my other secrets here to how I draw the figure with force is I think about the model standing prior to their pose. So let's say that my pose is going to be like this. So the leading edge in this pose is this shoulder. So as I draw it, I'm going to come up with force up my rib cage, come up, over, and down, and smash into this shoulder, right? So that's how the drive is going to occur. You want to think about time, right? Zero state is past. That's the coming from. Then there's the pose, right? You just see this picture of a guy like this, and that's the present. And then there's the future, there's the going to, which I use a lot when I'm drawing, which is if the guy's like this, what would be more of this? More would be bending down even further and pushing even further into that shoulder, putting more weight on my leg, stretching this leg out further, right? I always want to know what's just beyond where that pose is. So that's the future. If I were to now draw the pose that I took physically, it would have been all the stretching over the top side of my rib cage, pushing down into this shoulder. So suddenly it's like, oh, I got all this energy coming from here and smashing down into the shoulder. I was doing this, my leg over here, my strong leg was, holding up underneath me, right? It's like a really strong structural leg. And then my other one was off the page, right? It was like this, and then my head was like over here. And the applied force is right here. where I felt it in the pose, right? It's like driving into this shoulder. You see, so that's where all the drama is at. I'm like, boom, right? Pushing into the shoulder, and I want that power, right? I want that force and power to drive into that shoulder, and that gives me the opportunity to express myself right on another level. It gives my drawings more power and drama to them because I understand where that leading edge is. All right, so let's take this idea and we'll take a look at some photographs, right? Some poses, and I'll do some drawings with leading edge as the primary idea. So here we are in our first pose. The model's actually doing something pretty similar to what I just took, right? I'm not starting at the leading edge. I'm actually starting earlier, right? So this is going to be the almost where the pelvis is, right? And I'm going to ride over the top of the rib cage, and then I'm going to go down into the shoulder. So the reason for that is force is based on momentum, right? We used the airplane metaphor before, and I want to be coming in motion. So if I were to just sit here and try to draw the shoulder, I don't really have that much power behind me to get into that. So I start over here, right? I air draw. I call this the soft touch approach, by the way, or ghosting, right? I'm like air drawing. I start making marks, right? And I get down over here, and then I really want to push into this. So my mind has had the chance to think, I'm going to come up and over this mountain, and I'm going to smash my way down into this shoulder. So, and this is how I would begin. Here I can feel there's pushing out on the rib cage. That's not the leading edge. This is the leading edge of this pose. But anywhere where you see a curve, there's going to be an apex to it, and that's where the most applied force is pushing out, with this guy being the leading edge of the pose, right? So while we're here, I'll try to finish this one off quickly and just go through the rest of it. And we'll talk later about how I'm doing this and how I'm doing it as quickly as I am. Remember, the line is force, right? So I'm just putting down lines to help me understand the powers of the pose, right? Sometimes artists get a little frustrated at the start, I think, with drawing force because I'm asking for these really blunt supplies, right? And everyone wants to get into the details. And I get it, the details make you feel more accomplished, while you're drawing. But I do that purposely. The reason we're drawing with blunt tools at the start is because I want you focusing on big ideas, not small ideas, right? In a way, the bluntness of this is making me not get too fixated on small stuff, small information. This force is going to the shoulder, and then it goes out the arm, right? So it's like this. I don't want to take too much more time on this guy. Let's see, we got this arm over here, the elbow. It's like this into the palm of his hand and his fingers. And last but not least, his head is like crunched in here. So there's our drawing, and leading edge drove the way, okay? So this one's challenging because it's really tough to say where the leading edge is. This is a contrapposto pose. It means that there's this balance happening between the rib cage and the pelvis, right? So I'm gonna pick on this one. I'm gonna really try to say that the leading edge in this is her pelvis. So I'm coming off the rib cage to make my way there, right? Again, I want some track in front of me, like having a car, right? And I'm feeling this out. I'm ghosting, and then I'm drawing lightly, and I want to feel out how to get over here. And there it is. Here is the most exciting turn in the racetrack. And then I can start really pounding into it, right? I'm like, I really want to feel that hip. And that hip came from her back, right? The force of her back and the force of the edge of her rib cage, which is here, is pushing here, right? So here's my orange zone, applied force zone, right? And it came from up here, right? Here's the arrow, and it smashed into her hip, right? Hopefully you'll notice as I'm drawing, I'm trying to use very dramatic or exciting language, right? Like smashing into the hip, or driving, or flying, right? These are all metaphors that deal with physics. Because drawing to me is physical, right? It's me and basically my person, my body, and my awareness in this world of how physics work. And I'm trying to bring that to the table. I know what it's like to drive a car or be in an airplane or ride a bicycle, and I'm feeling that sense of power and motion moving from one place in the body to the next. So from a leading edge standpoint, we're done. You know, I've already hit the leading edge. Now I'm just moving on to other rhythms in her body. And we're going to talk more about rhythm in a minute. But I want you to be aware of this idea of leading edge, right? How it works. So there's other forces again. You know, we have this force that we talked about at the beginning. It's like, well, is that the leading edge? I chose this one. It feels like it's the real core of power. But there's force pushing out over there. There's a beautiful rhythm happening from her neck to her back, right? You can see it goes like this. And then we have her shoulder going like this and then sweeping up. And by the way, for those of you out there watching and thinking, well, I really like this. I like this idea of how things connect and I need to get more of that in my drawing, but I don't want my drawings to look like this, meaning with all this line and stuff in them. They don't have to. You know, this is like going to boot camp. You know, the idea here is for you to see the invisible, you know, to see how this actually all works, right? And that force is flowing from one place to another. In the end, you don't have to use soft touch or any of these things. These are all exercises that I've created over the many years of teaching to allow students to better understand how it all works. You know, I'm asking you, don't get caught up in the look of the drawing. Even if you do like it, it's more of an abstraction of understanding how things work in the body and how there's flow, how there is a leading edge, all these ideas to create more drama in your drawing experience and in the drawings themselves. So let's just imagine for a moment that this is a road. I'm going to make believe these are cliff faces and maybe the ocean is out here, right? Here's the sun. But it's pretty dramatic and it's very dramatic terrain. And force, you know, is about like moving through this. So force is very much about speed and momentum, right? And I want to feel myself like go through this road. And every time I hit a curve, that's where the most applied force is again. And I want to really feel that, right? So every one of these curves would be a new applied force pushing on a directional, right? All those insides. So, like I said, my favorite metaphor here is driving, race car driving. What we want to do here is try to get our mind into a place of thinking we're actually driving through the figure. So we kind of come in like this, and it should sound like this in your head as you're drawing with force, right? Hopefully you hold on, right? Don't go, ah, right, and fall into the ocean. Right, something like that. Right, that's where we want to get to, not giving grandma the Lamborghini in this case. You can't crawl along this road and truly get a sense of force and momentum and speed and G's and everything else that goes with it. Now, it's not to say that, you know, you should drive/draw with force like this, right? It's just way too fast. Like, I have no control over what I just did, right? So you want to find this fine line between moving fast enough to feel that you're drawing with force and yet slow enough to control it. So I'm going to move around. Now, where is the leading edge? I'm going to say in this one that it's actually this side of her rib cage. I'm going to say that she's pushing her whole body that way, and her rear end and her arm and her head are sort of tails to that, or in animation it'd be called like a secondary action, right? It's like this is the primary, she's pushing that way and everything else is like coming off of her, you see? So already my mind's in this place of movement. But one of the questions while I'm drawing here I get asked all the time is, how do you draw with force and keep proportion though in place? Which is a very valid question. Well, if I soft touch it, first of all, it's like I'm getting to see the whole picture slowly evolve, right? So I'm not having to commit to like a little place and then hoping I'm going to get it all right. Am I measuring? Sure, I'm measuring. Like, I'm aware of positive, negative space, you know, what's above and below me. It's almost like I have a graph or a grid in my mind. I just don't want that to be the reason I draw, right? The reason I draw is because I want to understand the forces of the figure and how they work. So I'll keep all those other ideas in mind. Like when I get to this shoulder and here's her rear end, I want to know if it's going to line up in the right place or not. I want to be aware of that. And that's really important because if the proportions or the placement is wrong, then that means chances are the drawing will be wrong, meaning it won't even work right because I'm mislocating things, right? The location of moments in the body is based on how it works. This is something I'm not really going to go into in these videos, but force darkness, you know, the line darkness isn't just power, but it can also represent texture, right? So there I'm like, there's this hard bone. I want to stick that hard bone out there. I'm I'm looking at her general proportion, right? It's measurement, I'm just trying to see if I'm right. I want to get the perspective right. I want to see that, this is the angle between her feet. Look at that foot, right? The ball of her foot's really exciting. You can see how her ankle's in here, and yet, her foot, we're coming over the top of her foot like this, and it's really like stretching and being pounded down onto the ground right there. Right? Really, really fun. The better you get at this through experience and exercising it, the less air drawing you'll have to do and the more immediate the lines become, right? And suddenly you could draw full figure drawings, quite honestly, in like 30 seconds. And we'll get to that a little bit later with shape. Here's pretty much the drawing. I've created all the rhythms in her body. I want you to see that her whole pose is here, and I've done it through rhythms. So we're going from here to here, I'm going through and around, right? That connects up to her leg. Her leg beautifully goes from outside to inside to outside. Let's push this a little more down into her heel like that, right? And this goes from front to back. So the system is all here. I can actually travel from her hand and her wrist, right, through her arm to the elbow, up through here, down through the pelvis, over into one of the legs, all the way down to her foot, right? So now there's a solid road from her wrist to her foot. Right? And that's what we're trying to accomplish here, is trying to find these rhythms. All right, so this one, the leading edge is the far shoulder. So I'm coming up the back. Now, the irony here is I can't see that shoulder, but I can tell by the rest of the pose that that's where I want to drive. Here's the leading edge. I'm going to tone it orange. Right? It's right there. It's beyond his head, right? Behind his head there. This is a C. You can see it here. It's a backwards C. But there's an S going on in here as well. So here, I'm not going to push too hard in this, even though it's a leading edge, because his head's going to sit on top of it right there. But what is going on in here is we have a C with an S inside of it. Why? Because he's turning, right? So you have this rotation that's coming down and around here. It also helps me with form, which again, we'll talk about in the next video. And then that gets me down into here, all right? And then I'm going to go through here, through the pelvis, and then I'll get out through his strong legs. You always want to draw through, Don't let the body block you from understanding what's going on, okay? I'm aware of like his leg truly connecting up to his other side of his pelvis, right? Like I want to make sure I'm thinking through the body. Hopefully you're also getting to see my sort of level of freedom, sometimes too much because I keep cropping, but just how I'm like flowing around and moving, I don't want to stress about this. I'm giving myself room to breathe and think and to see if I'm landing in the right locations, right? So there's that whole measurement piece, but also that I'm understanding how this whole thing flows. It's like he's pushing into the shoulder, we're coming out the back over here. In the back, it goes 3 different ways, force. You come up the back from the spine and it goes to one shoulder, neck and head, and the other shoulder, right? So this is like little explosion that basically occurs there. Right? His chin's about right there. And so his head's like here. And again, I'm not being specific right now. We're not up to that. So again, the goal is the path, right? Look, I can get from down here with the foot, come all the way up, push into I come across through and around to the back of the pelvis. See, I want that to connect to this. And then I also want it to connect with his stomach, right, with his lower abs, right? So that helps me draw through and make sure the stomach connects with the rear end, which connects with the leg, right? And then that's coming up like this, and we're going this way. We also can go this way, right, because of the C. So we've got those 2 paths coming up. They're both hitting into the shoulder right here. That's my leading edge, and then I shoot out the arm, okay? So I think that's it for this first section. We've covered a lot of ground, right? We talked all the way, from the beginning with line. With line, we talked about directional and applied force, leading edge, rhythm and driving, and trying to find those pathways in the figure, and the importance of thinking hierarchically, right? Big ideas first, and then you start piling on the other information.
Tired of not making any money with your art? Today's sponsor might be able to help you out. Squarespace makes it easy and affordable to create a storefront where you can sell your work. They have a variety of professional templates that are all customizable, so your website will always be just as unique as your art. On top of that, they also offer incredible 24/7 email support and include additional resources to limit any problems you might encounter when building and maintaining your site. So many people are already using Squarespace to make their entrepreneurial dreams happen. If you're interested in trying to be one of them, go to squarespace.com for a free trial. And if you like what they offer, you can save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain by using the link squarespace.com/Proko. Thank you, Squarespace, and a huge thank you to Mike for the demo. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and check out Mike's YouTube channel, or pick up his books in the links below. He's got 2 more demonstrations coming soon, so subscribe and hit the bell icon to see when the next video comes out. See y'all next time.